Welcome, grasshoppers. Let's see, we need a brief study instruction stream. Let's switch it over to next level training. Put up the proper header on this one. If we can get it. And we need the short Informant 150 arrival stream. See if that fits. Ooh. Will that fit? Is that nice enough? We'll take a look. We'll see how it fits. Looks like it fits perfectly. Yeah, we're looking at black in the first game of the new Informant that arrived yesterday evening. Way ahead of schedule. DHL is used exclusively by the Informant to deliver all of the Informant products. DHL does a great job. Sent me a photo of where they left it on my doorstep. They don't have the instructions that Amazon has to hide the package on my step, but fortunately I'm in a good neighborhood, so that's not a worry. All of my neighbors look out for each other. If there's anyone unusual tooling about the neighborhood, we're all aware of it. So for the most part, hopefully I won't have to go to get any more coffee this stream, as it's going to be that short. Now, in this particular position, let's just put it back on the chapter. Pankratov plays knight f3 on the first move against Matveyev. And it's often best to decide how you're going to handle the center. As I've often said, either you're going to hold the center, you're going to fight for the center, or you're going to give up the center. King's Indian type approach, as we mentioned earlier with Lauren, would be giving up the center. It would be knight f6, g6, bishop g7, and give white an opportunity to occupy the center with pawns. On the other hand, Matveyev decides to hold his share of the center, and of course attacking the center might be a move like c5, for example. But there's nothing wrong with just putting your pawns in the center, especially depending on how you wish to hold the center, as he does here. And of course we have a nice grip on the white squares as black. The dark squares are completely owned by white for the time being. And white continues along the lines of his normal development and ends up in a Larsen-esque Reti style opening where he protects his c4 pawn with b3. Now taking on c4 is relatively off limits, as we're going to give white another center pawn, and it could be both interesting, good, and or awkward depending on how things turn out. There's absolutely no reason why we can't continue our development with bishop d6. If there's no great shakes or worries about bishop g5, d6 is commonly the square to place your bishop on more assertively, preparing the move e5 at a later time. The d5 pawn is adequately covered. But first we're going to complete our development before we decide on playing for e5. Conservative opening on both parts, and here it is, e5 as advertised. And black, of course, firmly supporting his center, is able to recapture. And now white attempts to scarf the bishop pair, which it looks like he may well accomplish. Small gain for white, but a lead in time for black. As black is only one move away from connecting his rooks and basically placing his pieces on the best possible squares. I highly recommend the Informant, playing through the games, playing through the variations, absorbing the piece coordination of Grandmaster players is key to your development. Having a good intuition for where those pieces are going to be placed. And now black, of course, stakes out some space. Rather than having to decide on the commitment of his bishop on c8, he's just going to stake out some space, which is perfectly reasonable. Let's adjust this so we don't have to have so much of the ceiling. No reason to see everything in the room other than me and or the awards on the wall, memories, things like that. And in this particular example, white has to decide how he's going to go about breaking down the center. Now, in this particular case, white chose e takes d4, but Vincent Kmart, who is being coached by Peter Lecko, who is on the rise, German Grandmaster, Kmart plays a little bit differently. He chooses to try to undermine the center with bishop to b5. White defends his center with the help of a pin and is met by, and black, of course, tries to defend his center. And rather than playing bishop takes c6 as previously played, Kmart comes up with the rather interesting novelty, or at least never played before in the Informant era, bishop h5, and only now bishop takes c6, b takes c6. We have to keep our center under control. White prepares to hold the center, and after rook on f to e8, we reach a relatively equal position, with Kmart having a slightly worse pawn structure only because those pawns can be targeted by rook on a to d8 a little bit better. It looks like it's going to be isolated pawn versus isolated pawn should white ever get d4 in and black so chooses to capture. And this pawn is much weaker, so more than likely it's going to come to d4. And black will probably break yet again with the idea of c5. And then we'll have a relatively even position with 3 pawns against 2 on the king side, 2 pawns against 1 on the queen side. With all of the center pawns gone, the game may, of course, peter out into nothingness, but it's a matter of taste. Now, of course, the pawn on e5 was merely going to be exchanged if black was given an opportunity to capture for the second time with check. And then they'll take care of their queen, and the knight on f6 will need to be guarded because we don't want to ruin our pawn structure, but the g takes f6. But the pawn on d2 will be a permanent. Actually, the pawn on d3 in this particular case will be a permanent target. And this is the position I was talking about. We also have an idea of playing bishop takes f3. This could win material. In some cases, but first we're going to follow the line that I was just analyzing, and we have to choose how we're going to go about it. Bishop takes f3, bishop takes d6, bishop takes d1, bishop takes f8 is no good. And g. Queen takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes d1. Rook takes d1. Somewhat forced. The knight having some pressure on c6, c5, and this could lead to an interesting exchange sacrifice. Rook takes f6, g takes f6, knight e7, scarfing that pawn, putting pressure on the c5 pawn. Not entirely sure with the queens off the board that exchange sacrifice should ever amount to anything, and probably it'll just be better for black. I mean, better for white. Good day, Lauren. How are you? Yes, this is our short Informant 150 arrival. Thank you very much, Chess Informant. They are wonderful contributors to the quality. Did I not spell it correctly? Where is Informant when I need it? Why are my commands not working? I tell you. Maybe I just need to go with 150. Plugging it, of course. And all openings are covered in the Informant in ECO classification style. Going back to our game, after e takes d4, I'm not going to really delve into the copyrighted annotations of the Informant. For that, you should purchase the volume. The games themselves, of course, are not copyrighted, so therefore I'm only going to give ourselves a taste of what is happening. And now black has to choose, in this particular position, how to continue. And there are only 2 candidate moves in this position, really. There could be 3 candidate moves, but I'm not a big fan of exchanging the knight on d4. But e takes d4 has been played before, while e4 is the choice of Motliev. And this leads to an instructive, not quite miniature, as it depends on how white reacts. Now, white does take the opportunity to outpost his knight, and this also gives black a chance to recover his pawn and remove the defender of the outposted knight. So we need a nice in-between move with knight c4, which could be met by yet another in-between move. Knight takes e2 check. But since that bishop is somewhat limited and our knight is very, very strong, Motliev rightfully continues to keep his queen. Now, I've often mentioned that a knight on the 3rd rank is worth a knight. Basically, it's the same strength as it always was. A knight outposted on the 4th rank is worth a bishop, and a knight outposted on the 5th rank, although it's not anchored by a pawn in this particular case, is worth more than a bishop. That bishop, on the other hand, needs to be saved for further operations, just in case, to keep black honest. So therefore, white continues with development with rook c1, rook e8, and this is a good time, Lauren, for me to throw in my favorite maxim of rooks. The thing that took me so long, now I announced the stream in the Discord, as usual, and on my socials, as starting shortly. But basically, I had to listen to the microphone comparison survey before I continued, and I did return to the much clearer Logitech C920 microphone. The main difference, Lauren, that I attempted to differentiate between the microphones is that because I live near JFK and there's the occasional airplane that crosses over, I was actually hoping that the Blue Yeti omnidirectional microphone would only pick up my voice and not the sounds outside. However, since the microphone is attached to my desk, I have a feeling that the vibrations of the desk now, so we eliminated the serious part of the microphone vibrations because it was resting on the monitor ever so slightly, and now I believe I'm going to attach it to the bookcase to my left, the microphone, and bring it around in this respect, and we'll see how that works at a future date. One step closer, exactly, because I've got this nice, beautiful, expensive Yeti microphone, and I'm resorting to the the backup microphone. It doesn't make sense in a whole big picture sort of way. So therefore, we're going to return to our regularly scheduled programming after that brief interlude from an hour into the previous stream. So rook e8. Now, white does have to choose how he's going to go about coordinating his pieces. You can already see that black has a space advantage. Yeah, you're the only one here at the moment. The instructional streams do not draw a great crowd. The vast majority of people on Twitch, and unfortunately this is the case, are on Twitch for entertainment, not necessarily to become better chess players, but we're doing this as a public service for our group, not necessarily for the vast majority. It is. In fact, as I was demonstrating yesterday in class, for this week, we were concentrating on coordinates. And the students were commenting that there are no letters and numbers outside this coordinates board. And I also mentioned that when they're walking home from school or when they're traveling anywhere and returning, they do not need to check the street signs to know roughly where they live. They have a good spatial relationship with their neighborhood and how to get to their neighborhood that will guide them in. And that is the same awareness that you need for the entire chessboard. You need that same awareness of the entire chessboard. So, for example, Andrew Tang would score 88, and he has. I watched him score 88 in this coordinates drill, and it's really great because you can see yourself learn. So most of the students started off with 0 or 1, identifying a square without the letters and the numbers in 30 seconds, and they've evenly progressed throughout the first period of the class from 0 to 1 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, some reaching 10 in 30 seconds, which is quite an accomplishment because taking 3 seconds to move. Yeah, you're doing really well. On average, I'm not sure if it's the touch screen that's slowing me down, but certainly in the classroom it was very awkward. Hey! Are you going?
We gotta go get my big piss. Let's go.
Oh. Hey, where'd you go? He went the other way. My grandson.
Where are you going?
Grandson Cameo.
He doesn't want to get up. He's
He
tired.
climbed back into bed.
He's like, oh, mama, where are we going? Come on, Bubby, we gotta go to work.
He is off of school because one of his teachers have coached. Good morning, Alexi.
One of the kids.
One of the kids?
Yeah, it's not the teacher.
It's not the teacher who has COVID?
Yeah, the teachers are at school doing online schooling. He goes in at 10 for 20 minutes and 1 for 20 minutes. But it's actually kind of cool to see how he knows all his classmates. And he'll be like, oh, look, that's Colt, that's Rosalie.
Yeah.
It's really
Just
cute.
like you know the pieces on the chessboard and where to find them. I was telling the students, none of your classmates need to wear name tags.
Yeah.
So you don't need the letters and the numbers around the board after you become an experienced player.
Yeah.
What? Because
Did I get-
aliens. Cup. I want a cameo. No.
Not this morning. All right. Bye, Dad.
Love you, boo. Love you, Bubby. I will have to post a complimentary good morning, Alexia, or good evening, Alexia, as it turns out. I know you're not close to 12 hours away from me like Lauren is 14 hours away from me. But in general, we have this study, and I highly recommend practicing your coordinates just to keep a spatial relationship of where you are on the chessboard. But yeah, you don't need name tags on the squares to know. Wow, what's his really bold claim? Well, without knowing the names of the squares, absolutely internalizing the names of the squares, you cannot analyze deeply a position and keep a clear vision of the board. And as Lauren had asked a question previously about blindfold chess, now blindfold chess is not required to become a good player. It's a good drill. Yes, you can absolutely win games by purely preventing your opponent's plans, as Trojan proved. But I wouldn't say that you're doing nothing. Maintenance of a position requires a certain awareness of piece relocation and slowly improving pieces and preparing pawn breaks, as Moobot just chimed in. You have to be able to plan ahead to get your rooks into the game. And it is true that that is somewhat the Russian method, at least it was formerly known as the Russian method for me. Um, we are going to be doing a lot of Kramnik today. I've decided that I'm going to go with the 3 hour Kramnik study for Pegasus just because he's so backlogged. And the 6 hour stream for Chess on Earth for Magnus will have to be on Sunday after my lesson. I think I have a lesson on Sunday, early lesson tomorrow, so I may be cutting the Swiss stream short a little bit. And we have the playoffs for Society Billiards as well. But piece relocation and piece improvement is the hallmark of a really good player. The Lauren London system. So Magnus Carlsen was accused by Dreyev of exactly this when it's an old school Russian technique. He claimed that Magnus never did anything and just waited for his opponents to make a mistake, but that's not entirely true. Magnus has a great sense of improving his position while appearing to do nothing through quiet piece coordination and maneuvering in order to outplay his opponents. I once played a 108 move long game against a younger player. My primary aim at the start of the game was to keep him up past his bedtime. He was a candidate master. He was close to 2100. And basically, I did not make my key break in that game until about move number 83. And when I did make that key break, exactly, key strategy for evening games against young players, I made my key break around 10:30 to 11 p.m. in the evening on move number 83. Game started at 7, so I did it well into the second time control. I believe there were only 2 time controls in that one, so we were in the sudden death 60 part. So it's usually 40 moves in 2 hours, and then it's sudden death or game in 1 hour after that. So basically, I maneuvered and maneuvered and maneuvered using a Rosalimo setup as white to avoid his topical lines in the Sicilian because younger players have all the time in the world to study theory and usually do not give such awareness to the rest of the game. And I managed to make my pawn break on move number 83, and I had a decisive advantage by 90. Move 90, roughly 10 moves later, give or take. And then I closed out the game by move 108. Total draw. That's exactly how Magnus wins his games, as you saw game 6 of this previous World Championship in 2021 in Dubai. He basically literally broke Nepomniachtchi in half by waiting until Nippo made a slight error around move 130, give or take a move or two. I can't remember the exact move number. But then, of course, it was decapitation on move 136. And then after that, Nepomniachtchi collapsed and lost 3 further games, and it was one of the shorter matches of recent years. And it was quite an accomplishment by Magnus. And that's the way we should do it. We should just maintain the tension, like you say, and your opponent will crack, and you will collect the point. If they don't crack, they've earned the draw, basically. Smyslov used to have the adage that if you played 40 good moves, perhaps we will end the game in a draw. And Magnus has upped it to 80 or 90 moves. If you play 80 or 90 moves, perhaps I'll be willing to agree to a draw. It was rather incredible, and you would think that he's getting nothing. Even yesterday in a lesson, one of my students went into a line where they're losing, mainly because they did not want to give up their queen for a rook and a bishop, which was forced given the team battle played on Wednesday. Yes, at 10 o'clock Moscow time. I cannot wait for global or universal time. That way we're all on the same page It's just a different time of the day for us. I don't know what that will mean, but basically it'll mean that if we go by Greenwich time, I'll be waking up well earlier than I should, perhaps, or well later than I should, depending on how you look at it. But universal time is actually a 1 hour off for half of the year, I believe, from Greenwich Mean Time, GMT. In any event, we have this position, and White has to decide what to do between Pankratov and I'm not sure always why it's going to that one, but it is. Central European time, 8 o'clock, 4 hours behind, or 2 hours behind Moscow. How did the team do, Alexei? So, as we just mentioned, peace maneuvering. White is fighting for this. White is fighting to evict the knight from the center, and at the same time create pressure on the long diagonal as we previously discussed. So it's only up to black to decide how to coordinate his pieces and how to keep the status quo. Interestingly enough, the pawn weakness on d2 outweighs the protection of the e4 pawn, as in this particular position the d2 pawn is hanging, so we're not as concerned about losing the e4 pawn. White defends it, and then black dives into the hole that has been created by the backward pawn on d3. And although the queen can be evicted, there are further means with which we might load the cannon here with rook on a to d8 to keep the status quo here. Now, of course, the d3 pawn can be held by the pressure that is on f6 and the queen coming in last on that particular square. So d3 is being held, and it goes as such. There will be relative interference after rook takes f6, knight to d5, protected by the rook, cutting off the queen's protection, and then this piece will be anchored by yet another rook, and further discoveries, of course, to the queen. Let's see that variation. In the game, White actually chose Jalkai with a super instructional crew, because Zalakai's audience is primarily interested in chess improvement. I know that he's got a great crew that are always interested in learning. Welcome, Zalakai. Zalakai is one of the legends of our stream, and he donated our lovely sub badges. We're only 8 follows away from our 5 gifted subs, and at this moment I just have to mention that even though Zalakai is a terrific, you're already working on the toilet. You're so funny. Well, you are, I believe, I could be mistaken, I think you're an artist by nature. Your appreciation of music on your stream and your appreciation of the aesthetics of chess truly makes your stream that much more enjoyable as well, because those of you that are Frenier with the shout out. The standard shout out. I'm also going to put up the legends. That's what I was going to do. He is up there with Peter's Fiddler and Fiancetta, Chess Coach Andres. Each of those either rated me with greater than 1,000 or more than once, as Charlotte Chess Center has. Peter Giannatos at Charlotte Chess Center is a good buddy. Mad Quick Chess with his earnest and helpful stream tips. Zalakai helped me with my, not just my sub badges, but also with my microphone filters to at least make me sound less tinny. And I'm now working on trying to get my Yeti back into action. You're the best, Zalakai. I am a FIDE trainer and National Master in the United States, John MacArthur. Uh-oh. So what is going on with my... Is it because I have a... Let's try this again. Experience is not working. Wiki. What is going on here? My strongest student to date, Grandmaster Mark Arnold. I'm going to close MooBot, and maybe it won't think that I'm still in editing mode. So MooBot still seems to be in action. But what happened to my experience command? It's non-existent. I'm slightly worried. Basically, I've been teaching since 1984. That's to try to help me from having to repeat myself. I've been teaching since 1984. I'm rumored to be 39 years old, for those of you who are always asking, who might ask how old I am. And I'm studying or taking games from Chess Informant 150, which arrived yesterday from the DHL Express from Chess Informant. They also sent me the amazing book, by the way, Encyclopedia Chess Miniatures Volume 2. The first volume dealt with games from 1650, so it had all the historical miniature games, 20 moves or less, such as, I believe, Lasker Torre was in there for the most part. Adams Torre was 23 moves, so that does not quite fit in. But all the classical miniature games as well as the modern games up to 2014. This volume covers 2014 games only through 2021. So you will see a lot of Magnus Carlsen, a bit of Kravnik as he retired, and perhaps none of Fischer in this volume, as it turns out. It's too bad, but if you want Fischer, tall but Fennick, then you need the Encyclopedia Chess Miniatures Volume 1. And Fischer did have quite a number of miniatures in that volume. In fact, I highlighted all of the world champions, Steinitz's miniatures, and others. I used them mainly in my World Championship studies, which you can find on my Discord. All the links to the studies are in the Discord. I don't know if the WC command works. If EXP is not working, then WC probably doesn't work either. Which is unfortunate and sad. Maybe MooBot is falling down on the job. I would have to look into it. But in general, the experience comes up periodically on a timer. Now, we were just analyzing what was going to happen if the rook captured. He captured with the pawn, but of course, if the rook captured, there was going to be an interference in order to capture the pawn on d3 and anchor this knight on c5. So there's no reason why we would want to lose our pawn on d3, which constitutes our primary advantage with an extra pawn. Otherwise, we have 2 on the queen side versus 2, and 3 versus 3 on the king side. And this game will probably take a lot of effort. A lot of effort in order to win. Pawn imbalances and pawn breaks are essential. Not just piece relocation. As piece relocation is essential, but without pawn breaks and pawn play, in order to ensure a long-term win, we're probably out of luck. So therefore, black accepts the deficit in his pawn structure for just a moment, while crippling his kingside pawn structure to maintain his extra pawn on d3. And that's why this game is almost miniature. I can say almost miniature because it's in the 30s. But previously, games that are less than 23 moves would definitely be considered miniatures. But as the number grows too great, no back rank mate, the editors had to draw the line somewhere. I knew knight f5 was coming. There's some problems on the first rank. The pawn is certainly threatening to arrive on d2. And we have to maneuver accordingly in order to keep our pawn. One more time for a possible interference concept on the d4 square. Not ready yet. Quite courageous move, honestly, king h8. As I've often mentioned, there are three fast-moving pieces, three long-distance pieces, and the queen and rooks are among those. They can swing from one side of the board to the other very quickly. And the three short-distance pieces, or the three slow-moving pieces, the king, knight, and pawn, take a lot more work in order to plan ahead, in order to capitalize on those. Frenier, how are you doing? I know you probably just came from Jalakai's stream. I've been plowing away here. Can my team play? I thought it was Wednesday. Oh, this coming Wednesday. Let me just take a quick peek. We can probably put it up for grabs in our team battle. We had a specific person registering us for all team battles at whatever moment. And your team battle definitely meets most of the criteria for a dojo. Dojo, by the way, if you haven't already joined the dojo and need a schedule of dojo events, sure, Mubot is working now, fine, when I'm not actually interested in the command. But this one is useful because we always feature increment. You're always getting time back on a move. You should not lose on time or get dirty flagged. You can still get dirty flagged, but then it's of your own doing because you're always getting 2 to 5 seconds. Aha! I need to be able to make the dojo command available to all, right? Is that what's left? Let me stop for a moment. I will ensure that the dojo command is enabled for all when we get to a quiz position. Basically, this indeed is the position, and when black plays knight to e5, white responds with a rather critical move. Remember we talked about the interference idea that was brewing on d4? Well, the time has come. And after f4, we have to consider black's moves. Oh, it whispered you. That's good to know. That is good to know. Thank you so much, Chose No Warrior. Chose No Warrior, I feel like you should be a streamer. I know that I see you everywhere. You're not a real streamer if you don't have Chose No Warrior in it. Honestly. You're really not a real streamer if you don't have Chose No Warrior mucking about in your stream. So you fit all the bills. I'm going to keep it in my bracket. I'm going to try to see what we need to do to get a possible team arena. It's at a time, I'm trying to gauge when I am teaching. If it's 2 o'clock January 26th, I will be teaching classes on that particular day, I think. If I'm not teaching classes, that'll be the last kicker. The other thing is, I'm not sure why it's not rated. You have a casual arena at 5+5. Why casual? What is the reason? Really? During Catherine's streams, you appeared physically. Wow, I'm going to have to go over to Catherine's stream and check it out. How long ago was this? Catherine, of course, is one of my favorites because I've gotten a chance to see her grow as a streamer. And she has a very modest name, of course. And the last I saw her, she was doing a stream battle, a team battle with Jesse February, maybe Monday, instead of participating in the bullet arena. Oh man, you're gonna make me search for it. I don't think I'm gonna find it that easily, Chose. Don't worry. Unless she's got the YouTube up. I don't know that I think that September should be gone. Twitch tends to drop off most of the videos past 60 days or possibly 90 days, but I think that it's after 60 days. Twitch's algorithm saves their hard drive space by jettisoning the streams, which is another reason why exporting them to YouTube and or other means is the way of preserving them. At least YouTube does not appear to do that to you, that I know of. I have to find out. Maybe because I'm not an established one. 14 days for affiliates. It's a good thing I stream every day. I don't know if the highlights... 60 days for partners. I don't know if the highlights remain, as I did the Kaluga team battle, and I try to keep the instructional streams to a certain extent, depending on what they are. Like this one will probably be a highlight. Although we're this close to X number of followers. So if you've not yet hit the follow button, please do. We could reach a record 86 subscribers if we were to get our 5 gifted subs in, which will be pretty cool. I mean, after all, we're not doing this for the money on the whole. Meanwhile, let me just check my MooBot while we are looking for candidate moves for black in this position. Candidates. Whoops, if I can spell it right. Trying all the vowels. Trying all the vowels. Let me just see what's going on with my EXP command. No entries found. What? Is it a Nightbot command? Or is it a CloudBot command? I will be very bothered if my EXP is gone. I did not want to have to rewrite that one. EXP is gone. Oh no. Angel? Claudia? Oh no. I have to rewrite my EXP command. 1 second. Let me just find out what the call out was. Angel? Claudia? I think she's actually off to work. And she's actually out the door. She should call me if she wanted me to bring something or to pick them up later, which is what I suspect she's asking. Which is a little bit of a hitch, ironically, in my 6-hour potential stream today. So therefore, we're going to do Kramnik Topalov or Kramnik from 1999 to 2006 as part of a stream later. This is really a bummer that I have to rewrite that lovely bio of myself, but I guess it's time for an overdue. Only 2 streams, not for prize money. Yeah, the general consensus for everybody who probably understands that his team battle is a casually rated 5+5. Basically, yes, she did call me. Angel. Yeah, just make sure you call me. Okay, sounds good. It is. It's what, minus 6 Celsius out there? More than, greater than minus 6 Celsius. Got it. All right. No, I'll pick you up. 14 degrees Fahrenheit might be minus 8 Celsius. All right. Talk to you later. Love you. Bye. Yeah, it's darn cold outside. And I knew she was asking for a ride home. Weather NYC. And let's see how close I was. Minus 9 Celsius. Jeez whiz. It's absolutely insane. So in this particular position, there is a key move for black, and it is one that is what I like to call a game changer. And this also occurs when we talk about defense. Whoops. I think it's 5. The 5 ways to defend, basically. In essence, there are 5 ways to defend. Most of the time you might protect something, that is, if something 3 plus 2. I mean, obviously, I like 5 plus 5, but I understand that the slower the time control, the more the concern about cheating. So therefore, if you make it unrated, it seems very reasonable. But the faster the time control, like bullet, this is why Magnus prefers bullet, less likely it is that someone's going to be able to hornswoggle him with an engine. But casual somewhat invites cheating as well, since in casual play, I don't know that there's the same level of accountability. So again, you might protect something. If the knight is attacked, you might protect it with a pawn, but if the knight is attacked by something less valuable, we're going to have to either move away or capture what's attacking us. It is not possible to block a pawn from attacking us, but we are going to go to the most important version of this, which is counterattack. We're going to attack something more valuable than what they are attacking, and we're giving up on defending the d3 pawn in order to perhaps reach the 7th rank. And in this particular case, I can see the queen swinging in to g8, the rook coming to c2, the knight going to f3, the pawn needs to come out, and then the next thing we know, queen to g8 check is going to bother the living daylights out of our opponent. We also have possibilities of discoveries on the e-file. We already know that the queen can't go to e1 because of the treacherous rook and queen battery. So therefore, after the move rook to c8, the only square not being queen d2 or queen to b2, which would allow the rook to come into the 2nd rank, is queen a1, and black, of course, hammers hammers home the point with knight f3 check anyway. And this was the real concept behind rook to c8. And now mate in 2 is being threatened. Checkmate in 2 is being threatened with queen to g8 check, queen to g2 mate. I'm not going to go into the semantics of the knight blocking, which makes it mate in 3, but still, mate in 2 essentially is being threatened. And at this very moment, while white can defend the g2 square, he cannot defend all of the squares, as every single piece is now coordinated toward a common goal. And I'm going to mention that one again because this is the hallmark of the better player. Coordinating the pieces. And it is the game over, lights out. So interestingly enough, white was hoisted a bit by their own petard. You have to look that one up as far as what a petard is. Needless to say, white was hoisted by opening up the G file, and little did they know that everything was going to come to grips around them, which is very, very cool. Sabina Fwazar, who is doing a 12-hour stream, actually annotates the next game from the U.S. Chess Championship. It is also a miniature, So I'm going to put that one in this particular stream as well. This is the game Bruzon Batista versus Sevion. And this is from the U.S. Championship of 2021. And Black does win this game. Sam Sevion is a remarkable young man, a very dynamic player. Follows along the same lines of what we just saw, except that in this particular case, White being kettles the kingside bishop in a kingside attack. Black takes over the center, and now White fights for the center. 3 ways of dealing with the center. I don't think I've got my center command. I didn't say no. I definitely said maybe. There were like 3 different factors that goes into it. A, I have not registered my team for any team battles in the past. B, I may be teaching on that particular day because we have parent-teacher conferences on Monday and Tuesday, and I have lessons scheduled for both of those days, so it could be tricky and tedious for me in that sense, for the most part, to guarantee that I'm going to be able to support a team. I've definitely noticed, Alexi, that if I don't play, very few others show up. It's very annoying that they can't show up without me, but it is very cool at the same time, and I'm very thankful that they don't want to show up without me. It is common standard to grab space in these positions. It's one of the reasons that I have against London players for this particular continuation. For example, let's just go with this one. The fact that White really needs to play the move d5 in this position to have an advantage, and the vast majority of London players play e3. And they just play the same moves over and over again. They play e3, c3, knight to f3, knight on b to d2, bishop d3. It is, unfortunately, as our good follower and soon-to-be VIP Lauren JW 33, now 34. Inside joke. It's literally this. Has summarized the chess by numbers system. And it's quite accurate. But Rogan, Joe Sloan, who is one of the other basic streamers, used to play the London against me nonstop until he stopped. He actually started gaining space. I think he actually won a game where he gained space against me. And most of the time I enjoy those positions immensely. So yeah, grabbing space is the #1 way in which you are going to achieve an advantage. And this means that you're no longer playing the London unless you play those chess by numbers moves. And you build up a kingside attack, you play knight e5, you do all that stuff, and basically you play the same game over and over again. So, by the way, playing knight f3 on the first move tends to feel out the opponent. I do believe that the London is more acceptable when Black plays d5, because now we really do reach London positions where the e5 is accessible and Black does not have the opportunity to place his pawn on d6. And in this particular sense, all of the openings work, by the way. This does not mean that I don't play the London or don't have a use for the London, because sometimes you just need a position where you can't lose, might win. Unfortunately, if you want to improve as a player, you cannot play like that day in and day out. You really do need to stretch yourself as a player. You do need to try to do things as a player. And where were we? So in this particular position, g3, grabbing space in the center was our last note. Since this game is a miniature, it's important to note that White is playing a Benoni reversed. with or without the knight on f6 first, but the knight on c3 for white is the problematic one that allows the Benoni to be able to take over the center with e5, the knight on c6 per se. But we're a move behind, as it turns out. Standard Benoni operations. Absolutely. Black stops short, choosing a more solid setup with e6. Let's just go back in time for just one moment. So Bruzon Batista has played this many times as white. And in fact, our game is listed here. I will insert it later. Only after the comments, by the way. Only after the comments. I'm not going to let that game be seen just yet, because we do want to quiz you on the many possibilities of what is happening. e6, d3, bishop d6. We might even be in firm Bruzon Batista Sevillain territory. Uh-oh. Well, that's interesting. Let's go back for just one moment. Bruzon Batista. Did I do something wrong? e6. Bruzon Batista Sevillain. I wonder if the move order is different. I'm going to insert this one for just a moment. It is the same. And we are going to cover our notation appropriately, since in this particular position after e6, d3, bishop d6, white does have to choose how he's going to tackle the center. Whoops. Whether he's playing for b4, b5, or not. So knight a3 is a common Benoni idea. Knight c2, and only now black sort of recounts on his expansion in the center. White gets exactly what he wants. You'll note that the pawn on b4 was guarded by the fact that the e5 pawn is now hanging. So in essence, I'm not sure that black isn't behind by a couple of tempi in one of these main lines of the Benoni. Needless to say, white decides to grab space with c5 when a far more normal course of action would be rook e1. But after the move c5, bishop c7, question mark. It was considered by Sabine Fouassard that bishop f8 is truly the best move here. Barnacling on the king side and keeping everything secure, possibly coming out on the long diagonal, take advantage of stuff in that direction. We also have this lovely d5 square coming for the knight. But after bishop c7, the bishop is far more restricted in movement, and now white plays rook to e1. Thank you, Alexei. Thank you. I hope to be able to give you an answer. I have it up in a browser window. Kays, good. How are you? Great to see you. Only took me 3 minutes to respond to you. I can only apologize. As it turns out, I only plan on a short stream here, as I'm going to run my wife to the train station, given how cold it is outside. And at the same time, although she's been driving to near the train station and leaving the car near the train station, so she doesn't have to worry about being picked up or whether or not there are complications. Very smart that way. So candidate moves for black. Now, what I insist about this, and I was talking to Pegasus about this before, is that you must look for all of the good moves in the position. You must look for all of the pawn breaks like a5, or perhaps restrictive moves like a6, or the pins with bishop to g4, or the knight centralizations with knight to d5. And you have to try to examine all of those moves and more in expanding your board vision. Basically, just give yourself a chance to see the move that the grandmasters see. If you limit yourself to tunnel vision, and this happens quite often. Tunnel vision is where you lock in on one move and you cannot see any other moves because the first move you see is the best move. One of my favorite stories, a young man in our advanced Friday class, I think we had up to 40 people registered for the Friday after school at that time from 5 or 6 different schools. We had 4 classrooms in a less than 3-hour period, and we cycled them out every 40 to 45 or 50 minutes with 5-minute transition time. And we actually had several classrooms with Grandmaster Joel Benjamin and myself, Grandmaster Mike Rode on occasion, and we basically cycled them between classes so they all got one period, whether it was 45 minutes to 55 minutes of instruction with each of the players. And there was one of the 3 periods we would have off where one of the coaches would literally be having supervised play, where the players would play a structured tournament within that period of time, maybe a 3-round tournament, and the instructor that day would not necessarily need to teach, so you'd have one in every 3 weeks off on a duty rotation. One of my favorite teaching techniques for a large group such as that with 40 players. So we had about 12 in each of the groups with perhaps 16 in another, and it all worked out well. And basically we cycled them around based on level, and the instruction was geared slightly differently based on the material. Here, on the other hand, if the time is up and you have already considered all of your options, Samuel Sevion blasts through. I repeat, blasts through with the move E4. And by blasting through, he causes all sorts of consternation on White's part, because the only way to capture that pawn was with the pawn. The knight is placed off sides. The bishop comes into the aspect of the game, and we talked about this, by the way. All of your candidate moves, by the way, if you have a plethora of candidate moves that you're choosing move after move after move after move throughout a game, you can only play one. All of the remaining catalog of candidate moves remains in your storehouse, your warehouse, to uncork later. As I mentioned before, we had A5, bishop to G4. We no longer have knight to D5 occupying the center, but bishop to G4 was one of those, and we don't know when those other candidate moves, avoiding our tunnel vision, will be useful. To finish the story with the Friday advanced class, I remember one mid-level player, may have been about 1100, not quite 1200 in strength. His aspect and reaction was to the candidate move process, so that he only needs to look one move ahead, borrowing the Capablanca quote. He only needs to look one move ahead because it was going to be the best move. And that was a ridiculous quote by Capablanca, because while that may be true for him intuitively in speed chess, it is not true for the rest of us to become future Capablancas. It's just not going to work. You need to expand your vision while you're young so that you can take in the best moves, weigh them up, compare them, analyze only after you have all of the good moves in a position, and then you might find the best move. Certainly you'll find a better move than just the good moves. And if you're constantly playing better chess game after game, move after move, day after day, week after week, you're going to improve as a player. So Lazaro chooses to kick the knight or remove the knight, and black instantly has his pawn back with, yet again, a very devastating pawn on d3, which turns out to be the theme of both of today's games. Crazy enough, the pawn on d3 throwing all of White's pieces into a bit of disarray. Well, counterattacking can be the order of the day. And remember, our pawn break on a5 is no longer a pawn break, but rather an anchoring move. And when White plays the move king to g2, we are once again left with the process of finding candidate moves for black. Finding candidate moves for black in this position, considering everything that is going on, how we might surprise White, what we need to do to improve our position. And much of this involves not just pawn breaks, not just control of the center, but also piece play, piece coordination and relocation. I cannot stress it enough. If you've not hit the follow button and you'd like to contribute, please do. No great shakes if you don't. We'll be closer to our 5 gifted subs. Again, I am FIDE trainer and National Master John MacArthur. I've been teaching since August of 1984, since Petrosian's death. And Petrosian's death actually spurred me into teaching. I did not at that time realize that he had a school of chess comparable to Botvinnik's school of chess, which Garry Kasparov actually switched to. Garry Kasparov actually switched to Petrosian's school from Botvinnik's school at whatever moment. I don't know if it was politically based or if it was developmentally based or if it was a style issue. But in general, we are looking for candidate moves for black. And the candidate move period is over. And hopefully you saw that the knight on f6 is white's least easily improved piece. Other candidate moves might have been bishop to e5, planning on bishop to d3, d4, or c3. Knight on b to d7. Rook to c8 is of course possible. Queen to d4 is possible, trying to go after this pawn, but we'll run into bishop e3. Again, we're looking for only the best. We're looking for all of the good moves. But ultimately, knight to d7 with the idea of relocating to either c5 or e5 takes the cake in this particular instance. And it's pretty much game over as white attempts to defend his pawn. The e5 square turns out to be more to black's liking. And after rook to b3, we can already see that white is dropping a further pawn. We can always return to b4, and the rook on b7 could easily be trapped. The king attempts to move out of the way, and we can see that that rook has very few squares to choose from, as it turns out. Is this true? After the move a4, black chose to resign. Now, what is it with the b7 square that is off limits? One might wonder. What is it about the b7 square? Obviously, if we try to move our rook to b5 or to b1, the move knight to c3 could be devastating because we're going to be removing the defender of the bishop. And you can already see that even if rook takes b7, we're also removing the defender of the bishop. And of course, the pawn on e4 remains weak. The rook on e1 is lost, and black is demolishing, destroying white for the most part. I'm going to take those away so that in case anybody was interested in looking at them, they are there. Now, if you've not already followed, please do. If you've not already joined the dojo, now's your chance. If you've not checked out my socials, this is the time. As I often post future streams or immediately starting streams on the Discord and on Twitter, then you'll be in business. Excellent. So, thank you for joining me in this particular short stream of 2 games based on the same theme. If you check out... thank you for joining me in this particular short stream of 2 games based on the same theme. If you check out this... Let's cut that off, as we're going to send you over to another streamer very quickly. Tata Steel, of course, is the main competitor of analysis. And I will give you to another amazing theoretical streamer. He's a good guy. Not unlike myself, he has a slow, understandable voice. He means well in all forms of the word. Please check him out. GM Tranquilizer, everyone. And he is covering the games from Tata Steel as well. Cheers and thank you. Lauren, great to see you. Frenier, namaste. Thank you for your help and the shout out. Jalakai, you're the best. Oh, and Logic. Logic is visiting. I did not see Logic there. Drunk Chess, great to have you. Drunk Chess is some of my favorite chess. By the way, there was a great comment by Hikaru Nakamura where he said that playing chess under the influence may not always be helpful. Enlightenment, right? But he did say also, Hikaru, that studying chess under the influence may or may not remove some of the inhibitions that you have toward blockage, tunnel vision, and other things. So if you've not already followed Rogan Joe Sloan or Logic as part of the Legends of the Stream, please do. Please follow me on my socials. Cheers.